Hello out there and good morning traders. It is April 10th, 2024 and welcome to the Apteros Daily Market Insight. So let's just go over our recap from yesterday. Kind of an interesting day yesterday. We were looking at scenario one kind of being bullish and bearish back and forth in between here. If we got outside of these zones here, we were looking at more bearishness or more bullishness to the upside. And that would be scenarios 2 and 3. And that was generally what we were looking at with the plan from the DMI yesterday. So let's see kind of how it played out. Scenario one, right out here into this area here for shorting. We were talking about this zone as being mostly bearish. And we had to clear that out to really get into scenario two. So we end up seeing a nice bearish move coming into the open and traversing straight across right into our target area, doing a great job of that with scenario one. And then we get down into here and we're still kind of in scenario one, and they're really, this bullish move here just doesn't amount to anything. But if you were watching this or paying attention to this with intraday tools, it was a pretty bearish move, pretty extreme move for us from the bears. So not exactly the greatest scenario to be getting long in. And we end up seeing that market continue down into here where we actually had a longer term reference that I overlooked, and it was a mistake on my part because there was actually a bullish reference right in here that pushed us back up into this zone. But from there, we were looking at scenario two because we actually accepted down below. So we were looking at scenario two with possible inflections to the downside in these locations, right? And then, of course, you get a decent amount of MFE from here to here, and the market holds in this zone here around the 52.26s, pushes us right back up, and we're back into scenario one, and we get a really nice opportunity with the traversal across the value here that we were talking about with scenario one. So overall, the opportunities, scenario one here down into here for the main target, scenario two in this section with a decent amount of MFE being on the short side of things, and then back into scenario one here where we ended up seeing a nice traversal back up to the top. So overall, pretty decent trading whenever it comes to the volatility, the kind of movement back and forth, and the opportunities given the general expectations with our different scenarios. So really great stuff for us for the whole day with this DMI. So let's upload today. You can see we had a little bit of volatility coming in here with CPI as expected. So let's take a look at how that has changed or shifted the landscape on the ES. So now we're at a very important decision place for the bulls, looking at what's going on today. This is our main line in the sand for the early part of the session. And the bulls, this is really kind of the last place with our multiple time frame analysis for the bulls to really engage this market before we start seeing some higher time frames really shifting to the downside. So for the last 6 months or so, 7 months, as long as this bull rally's kind of been intact, a lot of our upper time frames have been showing that bullishness and maintaining that bullishness. If we get below this area here, we start to see those upper time frames shifting condition a little bit, and that would be something to be paying attention to for the open space to the downside. Now, for the upside, if this area holds, we start seeing pullbacks back up into some references here where we can end up seeing, the neutrality take over, inflections back and forth between these areas. But these are generally target areas as we pull back into this upper zone here, which is a bearish opportunity from our lower time frame. And as long as this remains intact, we possibly could rotate right back down into this bull zone. So taking a look at just the general landscape here, the idea is that coming out of this bullish line in the sand, we look to the upside into this bearish line in the sand. If we get up to there, then we look for the bearish line in the sand kind of coming back down to test the lows, using our neutral areas as targets along the way, depending on where we are in the price movement. So that's kind of what we're looking at generally with scenario one. Now, scenario two would be handling a breakdown of this line in the sand. So with scenario two, we end up getting below this bullish area, and we end up seeing those higher time frames starting to shift where we would look for lower targets into older value. Pretty much with the stretch target being somewhere down in the 51.35s, the first target being in the 51.48s with a neutral reference there, kind of wide open space here below. With scenario three, we'll be looking up above the bearish line in the sand. So scenario one, we kind of maintain the back and forth between these two areas, right? With scenario three, we end up seeing the upper line in the sand break, and we see a continuation of the upside where we look for, first neutral target there and then ultimate stretch target up here around the 52.64s. All right, so that's kind of the full landscape of what we're looking at for today's session. Hopefully I explained it pretty well, but if you wanted to break it down by line in the sand, you could do line in the sand here. The up move is where we currently are. The down move would be kind of the wide open space and more bearishness shifting on higher time frames. If we get that pullback, we're looking at neutral areas for the main targets, and then of course the stretch target being up here into the bear zone. If we get up into the bear zone, the expectation is that we possibly hold that, heading back down into some of these neutral targets. If it doesn't hold, we start seeing returns back into old value where we've been prior to today, and we start seeing rotations across that value with a major stretch target up here into 52.64. So this landscape here might not just be for today, but remember today we have some more news coming later in the day. So volatility possibly continuing throughout the session. So we have to kind of be prepared for some pretty extreme, movements and areas to be looking for overall this landscape today. Otherwise, if it was a little bit more of a normal day, this would kind of be our main line in the sand here, where we'd be bullish above and bearish below. But we have to kind of prep a little bit more because of the volatility possible today. So we have to look for how things might evolve if things really start picking up steam to the upside or to the downside. All right, trade well out there, mind your risk, and focus on your process today, because today is a big day for that. If you can really keep things in place, there's volatility out there, so that means there's opportunity to be had. Usually that's a good thing for traders. So keep that in mind, especially, and if you notice your stops getting stretched a little bit, remember, size down, keep things in place in terms of your risk model. That's the most important thing today. All right, trade well. Good luck.